Families for Life with Bryan and Brian, a podcast of Oak Hill Baptist Church.
Today we're doing a special episode and we're talking about answering the call of God. All right, well, welcome back, listeners. Brian, good
Welcome
to be
back.
with you.
Yeah.
Welcome back. How's it going?
Good to be here recording. Very excited to be here.
Yes, it's good. It's good to be here with you.
I'm wondering when actual fall and like moving towards winter will actually come, because where we're at, it's like I have a short sleeve T-shirt on today, or not T-shirt, but short sleeve shirt, and it's still like 76 degrees is the high today.
It's like 40 degrees at night, you know, high 70s during the day.
It's crazy.
No wonder we're all sick.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop and it to be cold and dreary and miserable.
Well, this is how fall and winter goes here. It literally, or fall and spring goes here. It's summer and winter intermingled is what it is.
Yeah, it just bounces back and forth.
It really does. So,
but anyway, we're here. We're excited. We're in the middle. Well, we've just peaked into holiday season. You know?
I'm hearing commercials, man. I'm hearing
and there's
Christmas
people.
Commercials.
Well, now, so it used to be you didn't start Christmas until after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Now it's like, then it was like creeping up, like Christmas started in November. Now I know people that started in October.
I know.
Like it's like Christmas, and then they take like the one day for Halloween and the one day for Thanksgiving, and everything else is Christmas.
See, and we're not even that crazy. We wait till at least after October, to do that stuff. But it is. It's getting even more and more, which don't get me wrong. I love people's enthusiasm for Christmas, but eventually something loses its specialness if it's like all the time. Yeah. So
it's like we celebrate Christmas. We start in July.
Yeah. And for those of you listening, we're recording this at the beginning of November, so it's it's pretty early.
Yeah.
But whatever. I'm glad you're excited about Christmas.
Yeah, glad you're excited. We like to do our stuff right around Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So we'll be putting up our tree around Thanksgiving-ish. So maybe the weekend before, maybe the weekend after, depending on what we have going on. So
our year's going to look very different.
Yes, which we're going to talk about today. Before we get into that, do all the things we keep asking you to do. I know this is probably annoying, but we'll say it anyway. Subscribe, like, give us a review. The biggest thing you can do, honestly, to help us out is to share with your friends.
Yeah, that's right.
Let them know about the podcast.
If you find value in this, then we hope that you will share that value with other people.
Yeah. And so today we are talking about answering the call of God. This is actually something that I have wanted to talk about, and now we have a reason to talk about it, because this is something that I think people need. A lot of people do deal with this, and then there's a lot of Christians that just avoid this topic. There are many people that run from the call of God, or don't, walk in faithfulness when God is calling them to do something. Do you agree with that?
Yes. Yeah. When you feel God calling you, pulling you to something, or even your desire to do something, oftentimes we let fear stop us, or uncomfort stop us. We let ease, and we live in a unprecedented age of ease and comfort. Mm-hmm. And it's so easy to ignore God's call because
we take it for granted, just all of the amenities like fresh water and indoor plumbing, and those things have not been but for the last 100 years or so.
Exactly.
Maybe.
Yeah. So it's just so easy to ignore when God is pushing you to do something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I would argue that over time it becomes very, very hard to ignore.
Yeah. Well, and I think pastors especially deal with this because we are called into the pastorate. We're called into a role.
Like a leadership role.
Right, right. And so, Brian, you've been experiencing a lot of questions in the last year and trying to wrestle with some spiritual things in your life. And you've come to a conclusion here, which we've just announced to the church.
Yeah,
on Sunday.
As this episode comes out, the church will have heard about this the day.
So what's your big announcement there?
Yeah, so it's been a long time. Over the last year and a half or more, I've really just felt God calling me into a different kind of pastoral ministry. And, we talked about this, like we were talking before we got on, like, it's not that I'm called into the pastorate. I'm already in the pastorate.
Right.
but I've been called into a different type of pastoral ministry. It's something that I've felt my whole life. I've always thought that this is what the Lord was calling me to do, to be a lead pastor somewhere. And as I was just thinking about that, I even told one of my friends sometime last year, I just said, I feel like God's calling me to do something different, and I don't know what it is, and I'm afraid of it, you know. And as I just prayed through it, there's been a church in Texas who has been looking for a pastor. I know of the church through a friend, and they wanted my resume. I gave it to them, and the Lord just worked through that process to show I had no intentions. I wasn't like looking to go somewhere.
Yeah, you definitely, God was stirring something, because we had been talking through different things, and I knew God was stirring some things in your heart, and I don't know if you knew exactly what that was, and this opportunity just kind of appeared, and you're like, okay, God, is this something I need to walk forward in?
And so I just, as I was even talking with this church, so the church's name is Second Baptist Church in Angleton, with an A, Angleton, Texas. It's about an hour south of Houston, close to the Gulf. And as I was talking with the church, we both were just like, we just want to take steps of faithfulness and see where God leads us. And that's where I think a lot of this, what we're going to be talking about today, is so important, is following God's will for your life looks like taking steps of faithfulness each and every day and watching where God leads you. And as we did that, it just kept becoming abundantly clear, like, this is the direction that God wants us to go.
Yeah.
And so my first Sunday there, Lord willing, we're recording this right now, but Lord willing, as if all things go the way they're planned, then I think my first Sunday there would be December the 4th.
So the long and short of it is, we know that Bryan is leaving Oak Hill Baptist Church.
Right.
And he's leaving Evansville to go to Texas. Now, I used to live in Texas, so
Lake Jackson.
You realize that it's really hot down there.
I know.
And they have snakes.
I have
just
literally.
FYI.
I have prayed. That's actually been a big deal, because we joke about the weather. It's funny you mention the weather, because I actually have grown up. I've lived basically my whole life on like I-64, and
but it's not a heat like. I just have to warn you. It is a heat that is like humid. Like, you walk outside.
That's what they all say.
And you're drenched.
They say that.
You're sweating so bad.
Until like, December. You're just like.
You're like, people will be mowing the grass at 6 a.m. to beat the heat,
I know. I am
Good luck with that.
I'm not looking forward to not having the seasons.
I like Texas. Great barbecue. Texas is great.
Yeah.
I'm sure that this church is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm sure the people are awesome, and there's great opportunities for ministry.
Yeah. So
I hope we'll be praying for God's best for you and your family as you go. And that's this is hard, because I know you love the church. You've been at Oak Hill for
that's something.
Almost 6 years.
I do want to say 6 years. I want to make abundantly clear. We are not leaving because we're not really leaving because we want to. Right?
No,
there's nothing wrong,
and that's what we're talking about in this podcast. Is you're following God's call, because you love Oak Hill, you love the people of Oak Hill, and like and we'll talk about this later on. But that's what makes it so hard to leave. It is someplace.
So hard because it's so comfortable and so good. Because
you love the people, and you've worked hard. And I will say that our youth group has thrived under your leadership, and but you know what. Our ministry, here's the thing. If our ministry is defined only by us, then that's dangerous. That's you have helped build and grow our student ministry and our church, and the overall church. And we pray that we can continue to grow and continue to reach people and continue to go off of that.
Amen. That's a huge prayer of mine, that like the youth ministry would not be dependent on me. And so for any of my, adult leaders who might listen to this, please know, like, you can do the ministry. Like, that's why you've been doing it. You've been doing it with me. So just keep doing it. It's the church that does the ministry of the church. And So yeah, so I'm sad, but I'm excited because I'm sad
It's a
because
weird,
I have
it's
to
a
do.
weird feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to do what God wants me to do.
Yeah.
And so let's keep talking though about we don't want this to be all about me, and we don't want it to just be about this moment in time. We do want this to be something that people can listen to and be impacted by.
I think this is a good opportunity, like we said, to talk about what does it mean to answer God's call. And we hope this will be encouraging to all of their listeners because, like we said, I do believe God places calls on our lives.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously we have the call to salvation. You know, everybody has to, every Christian has answered that call if you're a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ. But then there's other calls that God places. Some of them are pretty normative to every Christian, and some of them are special, or some of them can be different for different people, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think that in our lives, like, what do we mean when we talk about God's call? Like you said, there is the call to follow Christ, which I do want to talk a little bit about,
right?
Because I know
you're
actually pretty passionate about.
In our next episode, we're going to talk about discipleship. So yeah,
but God's will, like the call of God is really God. When we say call, it's like God saying, "Come, follow me. Come, do my will.
Right?
Be my disciple." And so we're really just talking about wanting to do God's will in our lives. And we know we do that by following Christ.
Right.
Jesus, we can't make it to the Father except through Jesus. And so that's why we have to answer the call to know Christ, to give our lives and be saved by him.
And that's what Jesus says. There's that call to follow Christ. He says, "Come and follow me." You know, he says it in different ways. He talks to Peter and Andrew, "Come and I'll make you fishers of men." You know, that's also a similar call. He says to Matthew, "Come and follow me." You know, these are calls he gives out, and in a much broader sense, he did call all of his disciples to do the same thing that he called the 12 to do.
Yeah. Now, I want to bring this up. It's not. It's something that we should be thinking about. It's not directly in the notes, so I might throw you a curveball here. But so when we talk about call of God, it's really easy for people to think of, oh yeah, pastors are called to ministry.
Yes.
But do you think that everyone has a call of God on their life? Like, does God have a calling for all people, for all Christians? Is that something that every believer should recognize? Like, God has a calling on my life, or is that only for like ministry?
Yes.
What do you think? It's only for ministry.
No. I was just gave you a yes or no with no explanation. No, I do think that. Well, I mean, we've talked about sort of the general call, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And there's more to say about that, I understand, where I think every believer has the call to follow Christ, to live, to pursue holiness, to do these types of things. I do believe, though, that we have specific directional calls in our lives where, and here's the thing that I find that a lot of people don't consider this or pray about this or think about this. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, what job should I take?
Yeah.
Where should I live? With kids that are going to high school, like where should I go to college, or should I go to work, or what should I do with my life?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think people don't really consider God in that a lot of times, because I've had many teenagers. I'm a former youth pastor, and I've had many teenagers who are thinking about what to do with their life, and they don't ever consider that God may have a call on their life.
Right.
Not necessarily to full-time ministry, because that, you're right, that's mostly what we think of, but a call to say, okay, what can I do with my life that's going to make a difference for Christ?
Yeah.
Let me give you an example. Some people are intentional to go to college to get certain degrees because they know that those degrees will help them in missions or ministry. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I've known people that have gone and they say, I can get this degree in water engineering, and then I can go to Africa and work as a, water engineer, and then I can also plant a church or be a part of God's mission there. And so, there are the people that consider that, but that's rare.
Right.
There's people that many times they don't consider what kind of job should I take? Where should I move? What should I do? And they don't ask God.
Yeah. It's funny. I knew somebody who felt called to missions, and just extremely excited and passionate about missions. But then as they kept just living their life, they were faithful in their church, they were, in discipleship, in God's word, and God called them into the military. And, I had a conversation with that person not too terribly long ago, and I just said, it's amazing. You're going to probably travel the world, and you know what? You're going to have an opportunity to share the gospel everywhere that you go.
Yes.
Have you considered the fact that maybe God has answered that feeling, that direction that you feel, that pull on your life to do missions in a way that you just didn't see coming?
Yeah.
Maybe these are the same thing.
Yeah.
Have you thought about that? And he was like, no, I really haven't thought about that. And I was like, well, you need to be intentional. Don't just be in the military, be a missionary who's in the military.
Right.
So I think what you're saying is exactly right. Like, answering that question, what am I going to do with my life? And then really just saying, like, how am I going to live for God with my life?
And I've known people that have been really confused by church culture because a lot of times we do only talk about calls to ministry as full-time pastors or full-time missionaries and things like that, where I have known people that have wrestled with a call, and it came down to the fact that they were called to be a lay elder, or they were called to be a deacon, a higher level of service, a higher level of ministry activity, but maybe not to the full-time pastorate. Or maybe they're called to be a bivocational pastor. I don't think we have to, it's not black and white.
Right. Well, I've seen people be like, if it's like they see somebody who's like a godly young man and they're like, you're supposed to be a pastor. And it's like, whoa. I mean, maybe. But not necessarily. Like, we need more godly men working in the workforce, not just in the pastorate.
Yeah, we need godly men in every
women, of course.
Godly men and women in every place, every workplace that would honor God across the board. But we need godly men and women to step up in the church. We need small group leaders and
in the home.
And we need disciplers, and we need, so there's those kind of calls that oftentimes people just run right past, and the church culture diminishes those calls, and I don't think that's good.
No, I think you're right. I think Martin Luther actually did a lot to talk about the call of vocation, this vocational calling. God has given you skills, and you are to use even your business skills, or whatever you want to call it, for the advancement of the kingdom.
It's good.
Right. And so that's what we're really talking about. Like, what is the direction? So that's kind of the thing we want to get into now, is like, is there a difference between, what is the difference between the general call, this general, like what we're talking about, this idea of what you're going to do with your life, and then like specific callings, like, what am I supposed to do today? How do I know that I'm supposed to move to Texas? Those sorts of, like, how do I know that?
And it could be as simple as, you have a coworker or a neighbor, and God is calling you to focus on evangelizing that person. I mean, obviously we know we should evangelize everybody, but maybe God has placed that person on your heart and called you to really focus and be a friend and a help and a discipler to that person. You know?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of these things are actually simpler than we think.
Yeah.
It takes some intentionality to really remember it. And so, so far we've been talking about this general call, really. That's what we've been talking about, is the idea that there's a direction in your life. And sometimes, I will say, the direction changes. I know people who've gone from, they've been, engineers, and then they became, I don't know. They would change their whole entire career, right?
Of course. Yeah, and I don't think
that happens.
Some people, I don't think you have to feel like you're
locked into, right? Yeah, it's not like you were born a blacksmith's son, and so you're going to be a blacksmith the rest of your. That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But there is a general direction that we feel, on our lives. But in that general calling, God calls us to specific things as we move forward in our lives, right?
Yes.
So, like, how do we know what that is? Like, what does that really look like? I think as we think through it, the Bible makes it pretty clear that knowing the specific callings of God comes by simply walking with him day by day. It's like what you just said. You were talking about the neighbor, right? And how do I know if I'm supposed to like share the gospel with my neighbor? Well, one, you know that that's what God wants from his word. That's generally speaking, he wants you to share the gospel. But then when God puts you in a situation where you're around your neighbor and you're talking to them, like the obedient, faithful thing to do is to bring up Jesus. Mm-hmm. So you know automatically the specific calling of God at that point in time is, here's your neighbor, please talk to them about me. You know, that's what God's doing, right? So I think it's important to know that there are like these differences in how we understand the general direction of our lives versus the specific step-by-step process of walking out that direction.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you've put something in here that I think is really helpful because we oftentimes think of the call of God, but we also don't understand that there are calls to other things, worldly calls, things that don't honor God, and a lot of times we don't even think about those as calls.
Right.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Explain what you put here.
Yeah. So as you know, you and I were talking about this episode, trying to figure out how we wanted to do it. And I remember I had written an article a while back about, I called it the siren call of a satanic culture.
Is this on your blog or was this on the church?
I think it was
website?
On my blog. It might have been both. I might have dual purpose.
What's your blog so people can?
Yeah, I think it's just like Brian Van Doren at Wix or something like that.
Well, how about we post? We both have blogs that we keep up with, and this would actually be a good way if you continue to post. This would be a good way for people to kind of keep up with you as you go along.
Yeah, we need to post. I don't have it
as you move.
Off the top of my head.
But yeah, we'll put our. Mine's just Brian Gotcher at WordPress.com.
Yeah.
.wordpress.com.
Yep.
And we'll put them in the show notes. But yeah, so you can go back and read that article and give us the long and short of what.
Yeah.
Give us the Cliff Notes version.
Well, essentially, I was just talking about the fact that the culture, really, Satan is calling out to us through the culture, and there's, you know, that could be a super complex, you know, theological discussion, but the simple part of it is that's how, like, that's what he's doing through our culture. He's calling to us, and he's trying to pull us away from answering God's call. And you know, I was talking with my wife about this, how in our world, there's a story of this woman who came to America from Iran, and she lived here for a while, and she was like, I have got to move back. She was a Christian, and she's like, I got to move back because there's this satanic lullaby in America that's lulling people to sleep. And it's like, yeah, that's what, see, Satan wants us to be comfortable. He wants us to look at the fruit and say, man, that does look really good to eat. And the problem with the call of Satan, though, is that it kills you. You know, like it kills you. And there is the other call, the sovereign call of God. And that is the call that calls you away from comfort sometimes. It calls you towards a selfless dependence on God that leads you to life.
Well, and I think this is important. You know, comfort is a killer. You know, we've been going through the book of Acts on Sunday morning, and you see all that God called Paul and these other believers to, and it was not comfort. You know what I'm saying? I was talking to my small group, and we saw how there was a series of towns that basically Paul was like, hey, let me share the gospel with you, and then they run him out, you know, or some people believe, but there's this other group that stirs up trouble, and, you know, some people beat him, and they, you know, they do all kinds of crazy stuff to Paul. But so it's like, you could not say he was not called to comfort. He was called to suffer.
That's right.
For the Lord. But he knew that God had called him to share the gospel. Yeah. And here's the thing. Paul was an ordinary guy. Yeah. He was not a superhero, you know, and I think a lot of times the only super person, the only divine person is Jesus. I think sometimes we take these people, we take Paul and Peter and even reformers, right? Luther and Calvin, and we take missionaries, Judson and Livingston, and all of these famous missionaries, and we put them on a pedestal. Yeah. These are super Christians. They're normal people, they're just like you and me. Here's the difference. They answered the call of God. Amen. And they followed God no matter what it meant, where they had to go, no matter how much they suffered, because they loved Jesus. Yeah. And that's the difference between the siren call of Satan and the sovereign call of God.
That's right. Yeah, man, that was good. That's exactly right. And so we really have to ask ourselves the question, like, do we want death or do we want life, right? And so if we want life, then we've got to follow God.
Well, and I think this is the part. Okay, so this is the part where we get sort of practical, and I think this is important because what you said earlier is following God's call is based out of your relationship to God.
Right.
You will never know God's will, God's direction if you are really far from God.
No, that's why I think this is such a big problem for many people in their lives, is because they think that answering God's call is like just receiving a telegram from God,
right?
And then being like, okay, got it, thanks, I'll check in later. But answering the call of God in your life is really just walking with Him.
And I think about the parable of Jesus when He says, "To much is given, much is required." You know, as we take the things that God gives us, and we, in like the parable of the talents, and we don't do anything with it. You know, God gives us the gospel and He gives us this, and if we just hold it to ourselves and squander it, why would He call you to do something greater for Him? But if you are willing and you're saying, God, I'm willing to invest my entire life for you, all the things you've given me, God's going to give you more, not in the way of money, but in the way of mission, in the way of calling, in the way of following Him. You know, He's going to give you more and more and more. And I think that's really the key of what that parable of the talents is all about.
Yeah.
And so as you get closer to the Lord and your relationship grows, and you say, God, I want your will, I want your direction. And if you're in His Word, guided by the Holy Spirit, you will hear God's direction. Now, it's not an audible, like God saying, Brian,
right,
you must go to Texas. But as you pray, you get a general sense and direction. And there's a peace. Well, there's a peace with the direction that God is having you go.
That's
and
exactly
the way
right.
You're stepping out.
That's, I put in some scripture references in here, that I was just thinking about. I didn't put the full quotes in, but, Psalm 119, 105 through 112, that's huge.
Yeah.
In my latest newsletter article for the church, I had this in there talking about God's call, and it's your word is a lamp to my feet and a light into my path.
Yes.
And I remember in college when I was studying that, and I realized, because I like to hike, right?
Yeah.
And I've been hiking in the woods at night, and how scary it is to be in the woods at night on a trail. You get off that trail and you're lost, lost. And so, I don't know where the trail's going. I can look at the map. I get a general direction of where I'm going, but I have to stay on the trail.
Right.
And I need a headlamp so that I can see my feet so I don't trip, and I can see the next few steps I need to take.
Right.
But beyond that, it's dark.
Yeah, you can't see the whole trail. It's not as if the whole path is illuminated. And I think that's what following God's call is.
That's right.
You don't know necessarily all, and I think people that are really control oriented have a problem with this, because it's like, I need to make sure everything is 100% sorted out before I take this next step. And that's never guaranteed.
Right, because this is ultimately about trusting the Lord.
It's about faith.
And so He does show you what you need to know, but He doesn't show you more than that, because it's about faith. And this all comes down to, because it says the Word is a lamp. The Word is the light. God's Word. See,
the God's Word illuminates your path.
He tells you how to live.
Yeah.
That's why we're always talking about the Bible.
Well, and I think we remember the Bible is living and active. It's the Holy Spirit is using God's living Word to interact with our soul. And there is a mystical part of that, and I'm not trying to be intentionally mystical, but until you are walking with the Lord in His Word, praying, it's hard to really understand. It's hard to explain that. Do you agree with that?
Well, yeah, because Galatians 5, 16 to 25 really draws that out. This idea of walking
in the Spirit.
Which was that what your article was about recently?
I had, yes.
And so
yes, you can. I don't think I have it up yet, but I need to get it. I need to get that one posted about walking in the Spirit.
I think I was reading that.
Yeah.
And so
it was in our latest
newsletter article.
Newsletter, yep.
And so that is the Holy Spirit does guide you. But that's the thing. Who wrote the Bible? It was the Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit inspired the Word, right? So we know He's the author. He is in us, and there is this spiritual sense, but it's all connected to the actual Bible, right?
Yes.
And so these things go hand in hand. And spending time with God means praying through the Spirit in Christ to the Father and reading his word that he's given to you and then doing what he says because you love him.
Right.
You know, and when you do that, you'll find yourself, if you do that daily, if you're faithful, you'll find yourself taking steps in the darkness of life.
Yes.
And you will walk down the path of God's will. And you'll find yourself exactly where he wants you to be.
That's right. Yeah. So we're not intentionally trying to make this mystical. It's about the relationship with the Lord.
Yeah.
And you will find God's path as you get close to him.
That's right. And that's I mean, I guess I don't wish that it was different because that just means you're in a relationship. But like there's no like secret way to do
well,
this.
and I think part of this, and I think one of the best examples, we can kind of talk about how this works in our own lives, and we can see how, you know, God's call has been on our lives and the things God has brought us through.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I really want to hear, because, you know, you've had to do this before, right?
Yeah, well, and the first thing I'll say is when I was called to ministry, I was really wrestling. I had just been a Christian for a couple years and really leaning into my like relationship with the Lord, like really committed, sold out for about a year and a half. You know what I'm saying? Because my first year and a half, I really struggled as a believer, kind of bouncing back and forth. And, you know, God's got a hold of my life and he's drawing me to him, kicking and screaming. And I'm trying to reach back for worldly things.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it was funny because every worldly thing I tried to go into as a believer, I kept getting caught. I kept getting caught and in trouble. Like the discipline of God was on my life.
Story of my life, man.
The discipline of God was on my life. I actually wrote an article about that.
Really? That's cool.
And about God's discipline. And so I finally am like, okay, God, you want me to follow you wholly. And so I started following him, started living for him, trying to make an impact in my school, witnessing, working with the Christian club there. You know, we tried to do as much as we could to encourage, you know, the gospel in our school, going to church, doing those things. And through that process, I began to feel like, what's the direction God wants me to do after college?
Yeah.
I mean, after high school, you know? And I began to pray about different things, about going to school to do whatever job, going to the military. I thought about going to the military. I thought about military chaplaincy. I began to think about ministry. And really, I actually got into a time where I needed to pray and make some decisions. And so I went into a season of fasting. Now, it wasn't like a no fast, but I did sort of like a Daniel fast, where it was water and fruits and vegetables, just to have something that would take my mind away from the normacy of life and put it on the Lord.
Just a focus.
Right, just a focus. And so there for about a week or so, I did that and began to pray. And through that, God really revealed to me, like, I have a calling on your life to ministry. And I began to like talk to my youth pastor. And this is another part of this. Talk to those people, those godly people around you, to see if they see those same things in you. You know?
Very important.
Not always, but definitely people that you trust, that you're close to. So I was talking to my youth pastor, talked to my parents, and I really felt like God was pushing me in that direction. And so I felt that call to ministry. And I remember one Sunday, you know, this is back when you went forward and announced everything to the church. I don't know that we do this anymore, but you know, you would announce if you, when you get saved, if you get rededicated to the Lord. And I went down in front of the church and told my church that I felt a call to ministry. And they loved me and supported me. And I went to Bible college, and I've never looked back, you know, and God has reaffirmed that call in my life. You know, there's been times where I've questioned that, and God has constantly been faithful to reaffirm that in my lives. You know, it was hard. I was in do you want me to keep sharing? Or
I like this. Okay. I want to hear this. Yeah.
Okay. I just keep.
I'll share too.
Story time.
Yeah, I want to hear.
Story time with Brian. But I remember I was in college, and I was going to Bible college, and I graduated, and I went right into seminary, because I actually didn't know about seminary until my first year of Bible college. I didn't know what seminary was.
Right. I thought I was in seminary.
Right. And so I went to Bible college. I graduated. So I have this degree. I have this Bachelor of Science in biblical studies, I think.
Yeah.
Emphasis in
seems
emphasis
ironic,
in
but
youth
it's not.
ministry. I know.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh yeah, there's seminary. That's the next thing. So go to seminary. So I was working at the bank and I was doing really well. I loved working at the bank because I loved working with the customers there. I loved my job. I loved my coworkers, and I kept doing very well and kind of moving up the ladder at the bank. I was first a teller, and then a new accounts representative, which is just like kind of like a head teller, but like, whatever.
Yeah.
So then I moved to office manager. So I was in seminary, and I was doing really bad at seminary because I was kind of burnt out. I went to Bible college, went right to seminary, and our Bible college, especially in the early days, was really tough.
Yeah.
There were basically it was brand new when I started.
You guys were really blazing the
when
trail
I started
at
going
Boys
there,
College.
and so we had seminary professors coming over, and they were starting, and they had to like limit them. Like, no, you got to understand, these are Bible college students; these aren't seminary students.
Right.
You got to
They're
limit
18. Like
you got to limit the reading. You can't give them 5,000 pages of reading.
That's so true.
You can't get a as a second year, I had many 15-page papers that I had to write, and like research papers and book review. I had an 8-page single-space book review.
Wow.
By Dr. Draper, 8-page single-space book review. And I was like, I'm just like typing, like, I don't, it was probably the worst thing that anyone had ever read. He's like, what is this mess? Anyway, so I started to get burnt out, and I actually began to question the call of God in my life because I was like, man, I'm doing so well at the bank. I'm doing terrible in seminary. Like, God, what is going on? And I remember I took a semester off because I wanted to pray. I was on academic probation because literally I was just so burnt out. Yeah. It was hard for me to find the energy and the will to do well in school. Yeah. And I know that comes across however it comes across, but
that's a real thing. Yeah,
it was a bad season in my life.
Yeah.
And so I took a semester off. I put my school on hold. I was working at the bank, and I remember just praying, and I was really invested at my church. Like, I was going to Highview Baptist. I was working as a like kind of an intern, like key volunteer. And I remember talking to Brother Jimmy about all of these things in my life and what God was doing. And he's like, Brian, it really sounds like you're at a point to where you need to go and do ministry. Yeah. You need to get out of the school and all of that academic. He says, that's not you. Right. And I knew that. I knew I was not like the guy who's going to go be a seminary professor. He's like, that's not you. He says, you can go. Cause I was like, I don't know, God, are you calling me to be like a school teacher? Or are you calling me to work at the bank? Like, I had all these things in my head going on. And some of the wisest things, he told me, like, as a pastor, you get to do lots of different things. You're going to teach, you're going to invest in people. You get to use all of your skills and talents that God has blessed you with. I really think you need to go do ministry. And so I was praying on that, and I agreed. I felt like God was calling me to do that. So from that point on, that semester I took off, probably like, I don't know, I think it was probably March or April, I made that decision. We were praying through that, and I thought, okay, I'm going to start looking for a position. And that's when I found God called me to Klein Avenue Fellowship up in Highland, Indiana. Yeah, with Pastor Allen at the time. Yeah. And so that was really a season of like God reaffirming that call in my life. Yeah. I was there for a couple years. Pastor Allen had moved, another pastor had come in. It was not a great experience. And I did not want to leave that church. I loved those people. Oh my goodness. I still am
you guys
friends with.
Still talk about those people.
There are one or two families. There's a couple families in particular that we still just love and keep up with, and we talk to. And it's just like when we meet, it's like no time has passed. Yeah. They just love me relentlessly, and I'm so thankful for them. And that's what made it hard to leave that church. I was only there for like 2.5 years. Yeah. And that's what made it so hard, because they made such an impact and loved me so early on in ministry with all my mistakes and all my stuff. And then God called me to Oak Hill Baptist Church, and I've been here for 15 years. Yeah.
Well, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I see some elements there that I want to draw out. We obviously see God being faithful to you in that whole process. But I see things like you talk about, those mentors, those people that are helping you remember what you know to be true. So many times we know the right thing. We just need somebody to help us to remember.
Right.
And so, that's a really important thing. But, what's great about this is we see how as God calls us to follow him, we're all individuals. Like, God is so amazing in the way he's created things to work. It's so intricate. I mean, it's insane how intricate and how interwoven our lives are, and how he designs it all. And he does it in such different ways for every person. And like you talk about like seminary and how that worked out for you, and not everybody had that same experience.
I did go back to seminary.
You did
later on. I graduated in 2010 with a Master of Arts in Christian education.
Yes. So that's a good example of how God didn't want you to do it this like cookie cutter way.
Yeah.
He had his own exact way that he wanted exactly for you. And the same for me.
I'm so thankful that I did leave seminary, because I never would have met Pastor Allen. I wouldn't be at Oak Hill.
There's so many little things that if you just didn't take that one step of obedience, then the path that God wanted you to walk down, like, you would have missed it. And that's the thing. Like, one thing I do want to say is I believe that when you come off the path, the way to get back on is to just take a step of obedience, because he's the one who will call you back to the path, and he will get you going on the path again. He'll get you going the way you're supposed to go.
It's really hard to make decisions if you're far from God. And I've always said that, like, don't make a major decision when you're really far from God.
Yes.
Because,
well, that's like what you were saying. Like, you needed to just you need to take some time back, peel back and focus on God. Right.
Yep.
And that's when he cleared everything up.
Right.
That's so true. That always is the case. When you're confused, when you don't know what to do, when you don't know what God's will is for your life, fast, take time off, take a break, get focused, get away, get alone. Jesus went into the wilderness to be with his Father. Yeah. And even there he was tempted, and he said, get away from me, because he was so determined to focus on God. That's the only way to know what God wants for your life.
Yeah.
So I think it's important.
So what about your story? How God has called you in different ways. I won't talk about this now because story time's over with Brian, but like marriage, that was another call that God put on my life.
Dude.
Anyway, so
there's so many, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll just talk about okay, I'll tell you this. When I started going to Bible college, and I was trying to make decisions what I was to do, after I had basically submitted to the call to ministry, that because I kind of did the same sort of thing.
You were in West Virginia at this point?
Virginia.
Yeah. How did you hear about Boyce, by the way?
Okay, so my youth pastor went to Southern Seminary.
Oh, okay.
And then I had, that's a great question. I had two of my friends. So a church that I went to in middle school, two of the guys that I knew from there went to Boyce College. So they were like in the years after you.
We graduated from the same school. I'm the class of 2002, and you're what?
13.
I'm a little older than you. It's fine. It's no big deal.
So my friends went there. I was homeschooled, so I had the opportunity. I could do whatever I wanted. And so I drove out there and stayed with them. And I got snowed in, so I stayed for a week. And I went to classes, and I was like, I am going to go to school.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I came to Boyce, and I was looking at all the different what's the word I'm looking for? Majors, the different majors that they have. And, the basic one was biblical and theological studies. And I was like, that seems like I don't really know exactly what the Lord's going to do. That seems right. But then there's this one that's expository preaching and pastoral leadership. And I was like, I don't know why, but I really think that that's what I need to do. I think I need to learn how to exposit the text, to preach, and how to lead. I need to learn how to do that. I don't need to just learn about the Bible. I need to learn how to do these things too. And so I just committed to that, and I said, Lord, I think this is what you want me to do. And I stuck to that. That has been so impactful to me. That has helped me learn how to read the Bible. Helped me learn how to preach, how to teach. And I've always felt this direction of one day being the lead pastor, being the pastor. But I never felt like I was ready, and I've never been comfortable with that. I don't like that. It makes me feel super weird because I'm like, why? I don't understand that. I don't feel good enough to do that. I don't feel smart enough. I don't feel competent enough. I don't feel learned enough, disciplined enough, any of those things. And so over time, while I was at school, I determined I'm going to focus on school. That's my main priority while I was at Boyce. After that, when I graduated and I started going to seminary, I switched my priorities, and I said, now what I'm going to focus on is making sure I can survive, living, and finding where God wants me to like grow in ministry. And that's when I became an associate youth pastor. I was going to seminary. I was going slower than I did at Boyce. Because you do burn out. If you can't give that everything, then man, it's hard. And so I took it slower at seminary, but I was still doing that, and I was just focusing on doing ministry how God wanted me to do it at that time. Now, I really don't like the idea of like stepping stones. Some people use different ministry positions as like corporate ladder climbing, and that's the wrong way to do it. But there is a sense in which like it's not normally wise for a a very green, brand new seminary student to just jump into the lead pastorate. That sometimes is good, but they always have some sort of experience.
Yeah, they have to have a lot of maturity, and they have to have really good mentors, and they have to be humble and be teachable, because you'll jump into that and just wreck a church.
And so I knew that if God wanted me to be a lead pastor one day, I needed to be a pastor who wasn't the lead pastor for a while. And that was when I knew that, and I just committed that. I committed to doing that. And that was, some years after that, Pastor Allen, Nick, Pastor Allen's son, was like, "Hey, we need a youth pastor."
You guys went to Bible
we went to
Boyce
together, and I met with Pastor Allen. I wasn't planning on leaving. I didn't have any intentions of coming to Oak Hill, and we sat down at a coffee shop with Pastor Allen and his wife, and Kayla and I looked at each other afterwards, and we're like, "Dadgummit, I think we're gonna have to go," because I knew
he must give off a really good first impression, because
he's really
that experience is everybody he's met with. They're like, I met with them and I was in the first meeting. He's like, "Hello, I'm Pastor John. I'm in."
He does it because that's one thing. about Alan.
The great thing is he's really genuine and caring, and you do. I think you will be a much better pastor than you think, because you have been around him and been under his leadership.
I see. One of the reasons why I came to Oak Hill was it was to be the youth pastor, but it was not primarily to do that. It was to be one of the pastors of Oak Hill who was being trained and equipped to be a pastor still, and to grow and to be discipled as a pastor. And Alan has helped with that. You have helped with that. Other pastors that we've served with, I've been
we've certainly blessed. Iron sharpens iron. Amen. Definitely, and I think we've helped each other in that.
I could not submit to this call if I had the call that I have to go to Angleton. I could not submit to that if I had not grown under y'all's leadership and with y'all's partnership. I just don't think that would have worked. And now you're never really ready. You're never just going to be great at it. But there is a level to which you do need to be prepared.
And I want to pull something out of your story where you talked about God stretching you. And I think that's an important thing when it comes to the call of God, because if you're waiting to have all of every tool, every resource, everything 100% in line, it's not going to work. No. It's like what they say about having kids. Like somebody well, I want to have all this money saved and I want to be right. It's like, well, then you're never going to have kids. Because you're never going to be ready. You're never going to be 100% ready to follow God's call. That's what part of it is to step out in faith and to be stretched and to be to really go beyond yourself. I mean, imagine these. I always go back to Peter and Andrew. These fishermen, they live their life as fishermen. Jesus is like, hey, I want you to come follow me, and I'm going to make you fishermen. Basically, I'm going to teach you what it means to be a rabbi, to be a teacher, and to teach people the gospel and to follow me. Yeah, can you even? They probably felt so under not ready, so ill prepared to do that. Right. And of course, yes, Jesus walked with them for 3 years.
He equipped them.
And they had such a great impact. But think about where Peter was when Jesus first found him to where you see him in Acts. Man.
Do
you know what I'm saying? And even in Acts, he made mistakes.
But he was a different dude.
But
though.
when Jesus called him and said, "Come,
yeah,
follow me,"
yes,
he was stretched.
That's the thing.
He wasn't ready.
Man, God calls us to live, and you know, some people don't like this analogy, but it is true.
Yeah.
Listen, God, living a life with God is an adventure.
Yeah,
and it is fun, and it's exciting, and it's dangerous, and it's scary, but it's awesome. And you know what? That's what life is too. Yeah. And how boring, how lame, how unexciting is a life of pure comfort. I mean, just think about like the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit. In the Hobbit, one of the things that is actually all throughout the entire book is this idea of comfort.
Yeah.
And what's happening is Hobbit is realizing how extraordinary a life is. When you don't only focus on your comfort.
I think that's right. This life should be an adventure for God, because when you get to heaven, there is that comfort, there is that joy, there is that rest.
Yeah.
We don't need to rest while we're here now.
Right.
We don't need to make this heaven on earth, because it can never be that. Right. It can never be that.
It's the fallen world. That's to come.
So while we're here in the whatever 80 years, whatever the average lifespan is, man, let's give everything for the Lord. Let's live for him and follow his call. So I think the challenge for our listeners is, what is God calling you to do? And it could be so simple. It could just be something in your current life. It may not be this big life-altering, move to the other side of the world. It could be, hey, your coworker that sits in the cubicle next to you needs to know Jesus. And God is calling you to witness to them.
You need to be brave.
God is calling you to minister to this family because they need help right now.
Amen.
God is calling you to be a small group leader in your church, a deacon. He's calling you to be an elder. He's calling you to teach this or do that, and to get yourself equipped and prepared.
He's calling you to just get up early and read your Bible.
And it may be that God is calling you to something bigger. Maybe. It may be that God is calling you to move and take a different job, or to go into ministry, or to be a missionary. Who knows? You'll never know unless you seek the Lord and you find out, God, what do you want for my life? So the challenge is, what is God calling you to do?
Yeah, that's it. You need to spend time with God and find that out, and talk to people who you know who love you and love the Lord and will tell you the truth.
Right.
Talk to them. They'll help you figure it out too.
Well, and I think you provide a really great example of answering God's call. I know you've wrestled with this for a long time, and listen, we're desperately gonna miss you at the church. I mean, our friendship, I'm desperately gonna miss you. It's gonna be tough to see you go. Don't start crying. Stop it. It's gonna be tough to see you go, but I know that you're following God. And one of the things we say at seminary is we always say we meet to part and part to meet. And so that means we come together. We know we come together and we're going to part.
Yeah.
But when we part, we know we're going to be together in heaven one day. And so we know that God will call us together for these times, these seasons. Yeah. This 6 years has been special. Yeah. And our friendship will continue on till the day we die. But we know that one day we'll be reunited in heaven. So while we may not physically get to be together,
proximity,
we will see each other again.
And I'm thankful for this day and age we live in. I really think about that a lot. The time of reality that we experience, the fact that we're recording something that's coming out in a few weeks, you know, and the fact that we can talk to each other on a screen, that was only imaginable in Star Trek. You know, nowadays it's real. And so I do want to talk about what this might mean for our podcast.
Yes, yeah. We've talked about this because this may be a question on your mind. What does this mean? Brian's leaving, and one of the things that we've really talked about is we're unsure. Yeah. We don't know. I told Brian that I did not want to put unrealistic expectations on him because he is going to a new ministry position. We're going to try really hard to finish out the year with episodes with us and get done. We always take a break at the end of the year around Christmas, so you'll have an episode. Our plan is,
we've got a few, I think, coming out after this one I'm still
our
around.
plan is December 19th will be our last episode for the year.
Yes.
And then we'll take a couple week break.
Yeah.
And
there might be some episodes. So here's what I want to say. A few things that I know. Okay, here's what I know. One, I know some of the people at Second Baptist Church listen to our podcast. And so if you're listening, hi guys, we're excited. I'm excited to come be with you. I know that they like this podcast, and so that's a reality. A second thing that I know, Second Baptist Church, their motto. So Oak Hill Baptist, our motto is Families for Life, right? Or a family for life. The podcast is Families for Life. Well, Second Baptist Church, their motto is Your Second Family, which is just like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting reality. All I'm trying to say is I do think that if God wants our podcast to go forward in a similar way, I think that it is possible, and we just need to pray and see what God wants to happen.
Well, I mean, the podcast
has
been something that's been in my heart for years, and so the podcast will continue in one form or another.
Yes, Families for Life will
continue. So there will be content continuing to come out. And our partnership may look a little different going forward. We just don't know.
We don't know.
And so we got to let you get on the ground and figure out things and what your reality is and your schedule. Yeah. And there's just a lot.
But there's so many things that are possible.
Right.
And that's what I want. I wanted to make sure that we are keeping our options open.
Yes.
And then we just, again, we take steps of faithfulness and we see what God does. And so that's it. That's kind of the plan. We're gonna seek God's will for the podcast.
That's right. That's right. So we hope this has been challenging and encouraging for you. We, we know that obviously this is some news. If you're hearing this for the first time, you know, hopefully Oak Hill Baptist Church people, you've heard this. This is not the first time, but for those that are other listeners, you know, you're hearing this maybe for the first time. Just pray for Bryan and his family. Please. We're going to continue to pray for the Van Dorens, and it's a tough season. I've done this before where you move and you go through all of these things, and so we just need to really lift you guys up in prayer, and also pray for Oak Hill Baptist Church. We're going to be, as we walk forward, we're going to be looking for another associate pastor, and so pray for us as well as we walk through that. And there's a lot of transition, so pray for God's best in that transition.
Pray for the next student pastor of Oak Hill. Pray for whoever that is. And I would just say, you know, if you don't know exactly how to feel, if you don't know exactly how to respond to this news, here's my suggestion. Can't tell you exactly what to do, but my suggestion is to be sad and be excited. If you can do that with me, that's how I feel. I feel sad and I feel excited.
Of course,
and if you can do that with me, that would be good. That would be good. And so, and talk to me. I'm here. I want to talk. I'm open to talk. I'm open to questions. I'm open to whatever. And just know that I love Oak Hill, and Family for Life. I just, you talking about the church that you had to go away from. You still know people. That you love. To me, it's like when God calls you forward, He's not calling you to less. He's always calling you to more. There's more people to love. There's more people you have relationships with. I mean, God's saying, "Hey, come get more." I'm like, okay, that's good. So let's all go and do God's will.
So you'll hear Bryan on a few more episodes to the end of the year, and we're thankful for that. And so that's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you all for listening. We love you very much, and we will
see you next time. I got the tissues here, so I'm ready.
There's enough.
I'm ready.
Whatever. I think it'll be a good episode. I want it to be. He's crying already. No.
What will I do?
I don't know that I've ever. I think I've seen you tear up like once
Everyone
or twice.
Leaves me. Oh, no. First Jared, now Bryan. All my friends are leaving.